Franck Muller, the jewel in the world's watchmaking industry. Today we are here at the Franck Muller watch factory to touch base with one of the world's finest watch brands. A talk with COO Nicolas Rudaz and the watchmaker Damien Dest in order to discover the insight of Franck Muller as a watchmaker.
We're here in Watchland, that is the factory of Franck Muller, the watchmaker, in Gentot, just outside Geneva. I'm with Nicolas Rudaz, who is the CEO of the company, and he's going to answer a few questions about this quite intriguing company.
With pleasure. Well, welcome to Watchland, and it's very nice to have you with us.
Franck Muller is, the most famous of young brands or the youngest of famous brands? Whatever.
Well, it's a little bit of both, but Franck Muller was the first watchmaker to launch such an incredible success story back in '92, and today he's still here to tell the story.
Is there room for new watchmakers today?
Well, I think there's room for lots of different watchmakers in this world, of course, and every watchmaker has its particularity. And this is what made the strength of Franck Muller, being very different to the other watchmakers. Back in '92 and still today, producing unique designs and unique complications never seen in other watchmakers' companies.
As you know, as I've told you, I'm no expert on watches, and I was quite surprised by the complications, as you call them, and the fact that some are more like games than anything else, really.
Well, thank you, but effectively Franck Muller was the first to produce some fun complications, such as the Secret Hours as well, or Master Banker as well, the Crazy Hours, which has numbers in different spaces, and it's a jumping hour complication. So
yes.
It's a beautiful, fascinating, very emotional watch, which people love to discover. And when you wear it on your wrist, you are the only person to read the correct time, because people will look at you.
I think it's a watch for a rabbit, the one in Alice in Wonderland. It's not a watch for normal people.
Well, it's a very fun watch, and it's unique, and it's been very, very successful to the brand. And we still deliver lots of different models in the Crazy Hours version.
Well, what is the most, I mean, you spoke a lot about tourbillon, what is the greatest technical achievement that you have managed to create?
Well, effectively, Franck was the first watchmaker to put the tourbillon at the front of a wristwatch, because before it was always located at the back of a wristwatch or in the front of a pocket watch. And from then on, Franck has developed many different complications, such as the 2X tourbillon, the 3X tourbillon. And today we produce the world's largest tourbillon with the Giga tourbillon. And we also produce the world's fastest tourbillon, the Thunderbolt tourbillon.
It's what, 5 seconds, right?
It does one full rotation in 5 seconds compared to the 60 seconds to the normal tourbillon. So 12 times faster, which is fascinating in the complications.
Now, you have a very large project just out here, which we can't quite see from this window, which is that you are increasing enormously the size of your site here.
So we're delighted to have just started the construction of our 2 additional buildings here, which will be exactly in the same design as you can see today, but 30% bigger. And these 2 buildings were originally designed by our owner, Mr. Sir Marquez, and Mr. Franck Muller.
And so you're more than doubling the working surface, and you're also repatriating some of your other sites.
Correct. So the idea is to be much more efficient on this site, and we will be bringing back some production sites here in Watchland.
And this is also where you run your day, or which is rather week than the day's event in January, where people come from the whole world really to visit the site and visit the factory.
Absolutely. Well, as you can see, the site is absolutely gorgeous. It's a visiting card, and we love to invite all our agents from around the world in January, once a year.
It seems that Franck Muller has suffered less from the slowdown in watch sales than some other of its competitors. But there's still a sensitive slowdown, particularly in Asia, of about 20%. What are you experiencing?
Well, effectively, there's been quite a bit of a downturn recently in the watch business as we know it today. But the strength of Franck Muller is the fact that we've only been in China for the last 3 years. We've only been developing China for 3 years with our agent there. So we are not as affected as other brands who have been integrated in China for many, many years.
So you suffer less from the downturn, or the relative downturn?
We are suffering much less, of course, and that's why we undertake our project of expansion at this time as well.
And you've just opened in Sydney, and you were telling me something interesting about the Australian market growing extremely fast.
Correct. Well, we recently opened a boutique in Sydney, and Australia is an up-and-coming market for the watch industry because it was never very much developed in the past. And it's showing incredible growth figures for the Asian market.
And apart from this large project, you have new models coming out,
Well, of
range?
course, our next watch presentation, the World Presentation of Horlogerie, is taking place here in these premises in January, from 17th to 22nd of January. You'll be welcome to come and see the full collection. And we will be launching very exciting new models again.
Oh, okay. So it's not the last of we've heard of you.
No, of course not. Franck Muller has been very different from the very beginning in presenting world premieres from day one, and we plan to continue in that spirit.
But you have also derived activities. You were telling me about organizing weddings in Japan?
Effectively, yes. Japan being one of our most important markets, we are the only watch brand to offer the full organization of someone's wedding. In Japan, they're very keen on big brands, and Franck Muller is a very big brand indeed there. And we will deliver the wedding for the bride and groom, including all the tableware and all the furniture with the Franck Muller numbers and design logo.
Quite an amazing story, really.
It's unique to Japan for sure.
Unique to Japan.
And each year we do about 8 weddings a year.
Ah, that's quite a few. I thought it was a very exceptional
Well,
event.
8 out of 52 weeks is still room for growth. And we've been growing every year as well. And yeah, Japan is a big market. I think they do, well, we know one company in Japan, they do 35,000 weddings a year.
Ah, I see. I'm looking at the brochure, and I think it's really quite extraordinary.
It is.
To have a
a
wedding organized by a watchmaker.
It's a unique talking point for the brand.
Now, I understand that, unlike a lot of watchmakers, you make practically all the components. You have your own R&D department.
Correct.
You have your own design.
Correct.
So it's a very contained production.
Absolutely. Franck Muller is fully vertically integrated, and we are very proud to be producing all our components here in Switzerland. And we mount our own watches, of course, all here in Switzerland. We've got 14 production sites in Switzerland, and we will keep in the Jura 1 or 2 production sites, including the dial maker, our own dial maker. Which is in effect a very complicated production. A lot of people just think it's a stamp on some kind of steel, but it's very, very complex, offering like 12 different procedures on one simple dial that you saw. So that company will stay in the Jura.
Okay. Well, Mr. Rida, thank you very much.
Damien Dest, workshop manager at Franck Muller, is our guest today. His workshop makes a tourbillon watch, and they complete the manufacturing process by themselves. So, this is an end-to-end production. Mr. Dest, good afternoon. Good afternoon. What makes the Franck Muller watches unique? First of all, their form. One can easily recognize Franck Muller watches, among others, by their form. Here we have a watch, and it is a Franck Muller's form. The form Curvex, they are unique in terms of their complexity and their form. This form is inspired by the Art Deco, isn't it? Yes, you're absolutely right. Franck Muller was a big fan of Art Deco style, and he imitated this form in his timepieces. We are particularly interested in the tourbillon, and this is a watch that your workshop produces. I don't know if we can show them. This tourbillon is the biggest of its kind. Yes, that's true. It's the biggest tourbillon in the world, and it measures 20 millimeters in diameter. And you produce also the fastest tourbillon in the world. Yes, it is produced in the other workshop of our enterprise, but it is manufactured in our enterprise. And it is an end-to-end production, isn't it? Actually, all the watches manufactured in my workshop are made from A to Z by a watchmaker. A watchmaker gets the components of the watches and small boxes, then he puts them together, makes them fit, and at the very end he presents the watch once it's finished. And what if a client is not satisfied, as you often make custom size? So the client should contact directly the watchmaker? A client contacts the enterprise and we keep traces of every timepiece. Every watch has its history of production, when it was manufactured, who made it, and what components the watchmaker used. And if ever there is a problem with this watch, we examine the history of production, and so we can find where the problem is and try to solve it. We follow all our watches throughout their lifetime. And in terms of technical revolution, you have made a number of revolutions, but you make always new ones. For example, today you use carbon to produce watches. For the moment, we are testing watch boxes completely in carbon. Like this one. They are much lighter and their design is more modern. We have already made some boxes like this one, but we still continue to test them. Our timepieces compared to those of our competitors are quite different. Watches of our rivals are usually made with metal boxes and they are covered with carbon. And our watch boxes are entirely in carbon. There is no metal inside. So, it provides a great lightness. Yes, that's true, a much greater lightness. Okay, and you've mentioned that your teams are really international. You have French and German people, Swedes, Asians. Is it difficult to find qualified people in watchmaking? It's not so difficult. There are specialists in this field. Watchmaking represents a little world. There are quite a lot of people, but what is really difficult it is to find passionate people. We invite people to work when we need a watchmaker. People come once or twice, they work in the workshop and we follow them at work. We observe how they can integrate themselves in the workshop's life. And if everything is okay, we invite them to join our team. You produce yourself most of components for your watches within the company, don't you? The group owns a fine watchmaking company called LFHH, La Fabrique Horlogerie, which produces almost all the components necessary to manufacture watches. So, it is one of the few companies of this kind, as most of firms buy at least some components from outside. All big manufacturers produce the components themselves. This is actually a characteristic of the company. What is the most extraordinary moment that you've ever had as a watchmaker? I hope it will be the next complicated watch that we will create. But for the time being, I think that the greatest watch that we've manufactured and developed is the Revolution 3 tourbillon. It is a triaxial tourbillon. We can see the heart of this watch, and it has a soul. There is something special in it. When we saw it working for the first time, we were quite impressed, and we were really very happy. And you obviously have a great creative freedom. Yes, that's true. Technical offices have a great freedom, and we always work together with them to choose the best watch, as great as possible. Attention to details, innovation, customer care, and a look into the future. It's all here today at the Franck Muller Watch Factory, specially made by Dukascopy TV.